What's up, buddy? It's what Jim. And welcome to episode 1 of Under the Radar, where we talk about an album that we feel is underrated or underappreciated. As you can see, I'm joined by Bryer's Music Showcase. He may be my co-host for this whole series, maybe. But I'm thinking
Maybe.
about doing one of these albums for every member on the Traveling Wilburys. We're going to start with Bob Dylan, with of course his 1997 album, Time Out of Mind. And in a few moments, we'll be joined by Sam St. John. He's just finished work, so he'll be here in a few moments. But I appreciate anyone watching. And how are you doing, Bryer? You
Yeah,
doing good?
yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Just had a nice quiet morning. I do have work in about an hour and 15 minutes, so this would be like a nice little thing to kind of
Yeah.
calm myself down before I head over.
It's late to we've done a live stream. I'm normally in bed around this. Well,
Hey, yeah,
not normally in bed this time, but not normally doing a live stream at this time of day. But it makes a change, I suppose.
okay, yeah.
But while waiting for Sal, I was wondering how you got into the Time Out of Mind album.
Yeah, so obviously when people talk about later Bob Dylan, because I've always liked Bob Dylan, but I mainly listened to a lot of his early stuff, like the '60s and '70s stuff. But I never really dove any further. But a lot of people have said that this was definitely one of his best of his '90s period. And so I've had this CD for I guess maybe a year or two. So it's been in the collection for a while. And before you offered to me you offered to for me to kind of talk about the album.
Mhm.
I haven't heard this album like since I bought it, so this was kind of a good way to kind of revisit this album because I remember I did like it, but again, it's just time. I had other music I was listening to, so I kind of so it just went out of my mind basically. Just time just went out of my mind on it. But yeah, it was kind of nice to kind of revisit it again.
It was my second time revisiting. Well, listening to the album. The first time I heard it was late 2021.
Mm,
That was when I was getting into the Traveling Wilburys.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
don't know how bumped into this album. I must have known it was one of his better albums of the 1990s.
right.
I've not really heard any of his other stuff from the decade of the 1990s.
Yeah, me neither.
But I think this is definitely the best thing he's done in that period.
Mm. I mean, it's a pretty high
There's
bar now.
yeah, and there's 11 tracks in total in this album. It's one single CD, but it's a double LP, I think.
Yeah,
But I'm not
I
gonna
think
buy another
so.
lot of CD, which you can see behind me. I bought it when I went to Blackpool.
Oh, nice,
That's what
cool.
that's what inspired me to do this live stream. Have we got our other guests now? Sam St. John, there he is.
Hello.
Howdy, fellas.
How are you doing?
I'm well. I just walked in the door about 10 minutes ago and had a change out of my work clothes and talk about Bob Dylan. So
Mhm.
I'm just now
We
getting
just been
here.
talking about we just been talking about how we got into the Time of Mind album. So I guess you might as well talk about how when you first listened to it.
You want me to go first? Okay. Um,
We've already done it.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. So I don't remember specifically an exact time for this album. I know when, and I've talked about this on my channel before. The first Bob Dylan album I was into was "Oh Mercy" in terms of like an actual full album from 1989. And obviously, I knew the Wilburys albums, the two Wilbury CDs. And when I started getting into some of the Dylan hits. Like I knew that they were Bob Dylan songs, but over time I started collecting more and more Bob Dylan full fledged albums. And I mean, again, around that time, probably I don't know, I was probably 17 or so 12 or 13 years ago. Um, I got Time Out of Mind, and come to find out, obviously the first album I really got into was "Oh Mercy" by Dylan, same producer, Mr. Daniel Lanois. So this was
Mhm.
the second album that he did with Daniel Lanois, kind of like their little reunion. What would that be? 8 years later. So that was kind of an interesting little thing that they did come back together. And this album came out when I was 3, so it is a Dylan album that was released during my lifetime. But again, I wasn't into Dylan until about my sophomore or really going into my junior year of high school. But yeah, not a specific time for this album necessarily, but it was around that time, late teens when I was really getting into all the Dylan stuff. So in a nutshell, that's kind of, about the time that I was getting into that.
But I think how we're going to do this is we're going to talk track by track, and then give our final thoughts and our favorite tracks. What we rate the album out of 10, or whether we think it's underrated, properly rated, or overrated. But this is Bob Dylan's 13th studio album. It's 72 minutes and 50 seconds long. It was recorded in 1996 and 1997 and was released the 3rd of September. So nearly 26 years ago. Is it? Yeah, nearly 26 years ago.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that, again, it's the 30th Bob Dylan album, and at the time it was considered a late career Dylan album, but here we are, what did you say, 26 years later, and it's still considered, now it's like mid-career, and this was already album number 30.
Yeah.
So that's insane to me.
I think I might have said 13th by mistake, but yeah, this is 30th. It's crazy.
Yeah, 30.
Wow.
And he's still going.
Since then, yeah, he's still going.
Yeah,
I guess.
And again, one of the things for those that don't know, he did put out the bootleg series, the Fragment series, which came out at the beginning of this year, which is solely focused on the Time Out of Mind sessions. So you have what's really cool, and I won't go too deep into it, but like the first disc is the album. It's the 2022 remix, but it's not this album. It is this album minus the Daniel Lanois production. It's very stripped back. And then you have all the outtakes. You have him doing these songs live from 1998 to 2001. And then a bunch of unreleased songs that didn't make this album or ended up on Love and Theft, which was the follow-up. So for those that don't know this, it's very, very good. So
yeah, I'm aware of that, but I've not listened to it yet.
It's a lot of good stuff.
But what do you guys think of the Time of Mind album cover? Do you think it's one of his better album covers?
It's pretty interesting. I know it was just Daniel Lanois. He just took a photo of Bob in the studio right there. It's very blurry.
There's not a whole lot to it, really. But yeah, it's still pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not nice. I like how out is outside the border, which is kind of makes it stand out a bit.
It's pretty cool. Yeah,
so it's a decent cover.
I think it's kind of fitting with the sound of the album. I mean, you kind of got like a fisheye going on there, and obviously there's a lot of effects on the music and Dylan's voice on the record. Right. So that kind of matches too with everything. And again, Dylan's got a new voice for this album, so everything is just kind of warped and very, very Daniel Lanois. But yeah, I like the cover quite a bit. It's very 90s. It matches a lot of other 90s type albums during that same period. So.
Well, I guess we'll talk about the first track on the album, which is "Lovesick." So we'll just all discuss that song really. What do you guys thought on that song opener?
Go ahead, Bryer.
Yeah, so it's a pretty good opening track. I think it sets the tone pretty well.
Yeah, I agree.
We already mentioned that there was some heavy effects on Bob's vocals here, and for the most part, it kind of goes pretty well with the sound of it. And it's a very moody type of track. I really like some of the guitar licks on here, and even when the guitar we have a big guitar strum on it, I think it really boosts it up a bit more. Throughout this album, there's a lot of great keyboard and organ playing throughout. But yeah, it's a pretty good song. I think it just sets the tone really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I'll say I've seen Dylan 4 times, and I think he's done this song at least 2 of the times that I've seen him. I think maybe 3. He didn't do it the last time I saw him, but he's done it at least 2. And it's. I mean, again, we mentioned this album came out in '97. This is his 11th most performed song ever. Out of all the music he's ever done, this is one that he still loves playing. And again, forgive me if y'all had already talked about this before I jumped on, but there's a misconception about this album that it was written after Dylan found out that he was sick with a very, very, very serious infection called histoplasmosis,
Mm.
and the misconception is that he was sick and like was, people were worried that he was going to die, and that was true, that they thought he might die, but that didn't happen until after the album was recorded. And so a lot of people say, oh, this album has a lot of mortality and the themes to this record, and it does. I mean, actually a lot of the lyrics that I pulled from all the songs are based on mortality. However, the sickness didn't happen until after the record was completed. So again, with that said, really like the song. Bryer made a good point. It's definitely a good tone setter for the album. It was a song that he performed at the 1998 Grammy Awards, where there was a incident.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I saw the video.
With the soy bomb dancer that came out on stage and danced around, kind of unbeknownst to Bob, but Bob handled it like a champ. Very, very weird moment in the Dylan career. But there's the line that I pulled from it. He says, "I see silhouettes in the window. I'll watch them till they're gone, and they leave me hanging on to a shadow. I'm sick of love. I hear the clock tick." So right there, track one, he's talking about the clock ticking. And again, sets the tone. It's not a rocker. It's just a very bluesy with that, bow now guitar track lick to it. Really, really cool. I really, really like this song. It's one that I forget about until I re-listen to it. But out here, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a really good song. It's really, really good. And it's been covered by people like the White Stripes. So I mean, it's held its own.
Yeah, it's a pretty awesome track, and it's quite a different way of him starting an album than it usually does. He usually starts a bit rockier with his stuff. But then you got the track Dirt Road Blues, which I don't think is quite as good as Lovesick, but I still think it's a pretty great track, though. It's not one of the more memorable ones on the album, though. In my opinion.
Yeah, for me, this was the first song that I ever heard from this album, and I absolutely loved it the first time I heard it. And it's probably, I mean, at one point it was my favorite song on the album. That has changed, but I love, because Lovesick kind of ends, and then this song sort of like fades in with that kind of like acoustic-y. It's really, I think it's really cool. It's the first song that was recorded for the album, and I love the grit in Dylan's voice where he says, gonna walk down that dirt road till someone lets me ride, and he holds that ride out for so long. But again, the mortality thing, there is some there's some merit in that, because the line he says, but I've been looking at my shadow, I've been watching the clouds up above, looking at my shadow, watching the clouds up above, rolling through the rain and hail, looking for the sunny side of love. So there he's, again, kind of in a darkness, looking for the bright side, even though he kind of feels like he's in the dark. He's got his shadow behind him. I absolutely love this track. I think it's super rocking, and it's in my top. I would say top 3 on this album for sure. I think it's probably number 3 for me. But yeah, I love this track so much.
Cool.
What do you think?
What are your thoughts on this one, Bryer?
All right, so we're on Dirt Road Blues, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, this was definitely a more upbeat song. Definitely has a more rockabilly type of sound to it. Definitely the most 60s sounding song on the album, I think. There's some nice, interesting keyboard sounds. For the most part, I'm kind of in the middle with this song. I do like it a lot, and that's something I will say. There's no song on this album I did not like. I pretty much enjoy all the songs on here. But comparatively, this song is probably one that I usually forget about this song every once in a while. But when I do play it, it does kind of like, okay, I do like this song. Yes, I can listen to this. But yes, I still think it's pretty good. It's good for what it is.
Yeah. And then we got one of my favorite tracks on the album, "Standing in the Doorway." Yeah, it's a pretty awesome Bob Dylan song, and I completely forgot about this song until revisiting the album.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah, it's I think it's a really great track. There was a Bob Dylan tribute album that came out last year, I think, by Chrissie Hynde, the lead singer of the Pretenders, and it's called "Standing in the Doorway," and she does a cover of this, which is really cool. And then actually a lot of female artists have covered this. Bonnie Raitt also covered it. I've never heard her version, but I've heard of it. And she obviously Bonnie Raitt has that very soulful bluesy type voice. And then again, one of those songs, I love the phrasing of Bob Dylan, where he says, "You left me standing in the doorway crying," and he holds out the word crying for so long. He says, "Suffering like a fool when the last rays of daylight go down, buddy, you're old no more." Again, he's talking about aging. And it's funny, as you hear Dylan's voice, you think he's super old, but he's only 56 years old during this album, which is quite young. I mean, you compare, his 56 to or somebody like Bono, who's like in his, late 60s, and the way that Bono sounds still sounds fairly young, or, anybody like that hasn't lived the same kind of hardship that Bob Dylan has lived. But I think it's an absolutely beautiful track. I love the slow down nature of it. I love Dylan. Almost sounds like he is crying during the song. He's just in agony. And I think it's absolutely wonderful. Love the track.
Yeah. I'm 100% agree. This is one of my favorite songs on the album. Again, I'm usually a sucker for these types of slow, very moody type of songs. And Sam brought up how Bob holds those notes. And again, it just really fits. You can hear the emotion coming from it. And again, the organ is just so good throughout this whole album, and the guitar playing and the drums are just keeping this nice steady beat, just keeping it going. And again, there's a lot of long songs on the album, but it just doesn't feel, it doesn't really bother you. He just takes you on this journey, and you're just kind of there with it. So yeah, this was a big highlight for me.
It's definitely one I want to revisit again soon. Yeah.
It's a great one. And I mean, we're talking about the instrumentation. There are so many great players on this album. I mean, you have, obviously Daniel Lanois is all over the album with production and all the instruments that he can play. You also have Bob Dylan's longtime kind of co-lead guy, Tony Garnier, on the bass, who's played with a ton of people. He played with Tom Waits for years. Jim Keltner, the longtime session guy who played with everyone. I mean, he was playing with Dylan in the 70s. He played with the Wilburys. He's played with all the Beatles, different solo efforts. You have, David Kemper from the Jerry Garcia band. You have Augie Myers from the Sir Douglas Quintet. And, just an absolute, top-notch group of session guys. So, I mean, they bring it up another level on top of Dylan's writing and the production.
Yeah. I definitely agree there. And then we got the track "Million Miles." It's a pretty great one. It's not my favorite from the first side, but I do really like it though. It's probably middle of the road on the album for me though.
Yeah, it's a slower blues track, and I know I was reading some essays in preparation for this, and people were talking about people that don't necessarily like the blues would probably not necessarily love this track. And I'm not a big blues guy. I have very, very few, if any, blues albums, like full-fledged blues albums in my collection. It's just not something I'm crazy about. But with that, one of the lines that I wrote, again, it's about that desperation. He says, "Well, I don't dare close my eyes. I don't dare wink. Maybe in the next life, I'll be able to hear myself think. Feel like talking to somebody, but I just don't know who. Well, I'm trying to get closer, but I'm still a million miles from you." Again, talking about the next life, talking about, again, what's going to happen after he passes away. Again, talking like somebody who's like in their, late 70s or 80s. He's just kind of late middle age, again, right here. And hadn't even had the health scare yet. So it's just interesting to think about what Bob was thinking during some of the writing of this, and like what he was, imagining about the next phase of his career. So but it's a good track. It's probably on the lower end of my favorites on here. It's probably definitely the 8th or 9th on the bottom of the list for me, but it's still solid.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. Yeah, it's a very solid song. And yeah, I am one of those people that I'm not the biggest blues fan. I like blues rock, but just stripped down blues, it's like I'm like hit or miss on it. But again, there's still some good stuff about it. Again, the musicianship. Again, you still have the organ and the drums there. Definitely has a bit more of a grittier tone than on Dirt Road Blues, I think, which gives it a little bit of an edge. But yeah, it was a solid song, but again, somewhere in the middle for me.
Yeah. And then we go to another one of my favorite tracks of the album, "Trying to Get to Heaven." Yeah, that's another one I wouldn't mind revisiting again soon. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a very solid song. It's one that I've heard. I heard him do it live. I think the second time that I saw him. I've seen him do it at least once. And it's funny. I was re-listening to the album, one more time today, and I heard that song. My dad's a big Dylan fan. I shot him that song, and I was like, this is a very underappreciated Dylan track, and he listened to it and he said, yeah, he said that's a really solid track. I mean, beautiful melancholy sound to it. It's got that harmonica bit in there. Again, talking about aging, he says, every day your memory grows dimmer. It doesn't haunt me like it did before. I've been walking through the middle of nowhere trying to get to heaven before they close the door, which is that little tag at the end of every stanza just makes it. I mean, again, it's all about phrasing with Bob, because he says that line differently every time, which is, again, not uncommon for him to do. But he kind of like does like this little lilt in his voice with door. He says, close the door, and he kind of goes up and down. But it changes every single time that he does it. And I love it. It's just a haunting song, but very, very, it's almost like from another time. And I absolutely love it.
Yeah. Again, I agree with with both of you. Yeah, this was another big highlight for me. Again, this was when revisiting this album, I was just reminding me like, oh my God, there's a lot more great songs than I remember. And yeah, the piano on this song sounds incredible. The drums on here was pretty interesting because it has a big sound to it, but it's not in your face. It's just there in the background. It has it's very plosive sound to it. Again, it's not too loud, but it's just loud enough that you can definitely notice it if you hear it carefully. The guitar playing is really nice. And again, the vocal melody that we've talked about, yeah, it's just a very nice, very melodic melody, which is, I'm a sucker for that type of stuff. And again, you have Bob's harmonica, which is the only time he actually uses it on this album, which is nice little callback, because Bob started his career with the harmonica and just guitar, so it's kind of nice to hear it here. But yeah, it was a very beautiful song. Another great highlight for me. Maybe top 3, possibly.
Cool.
Then we got the track "Till I Fell in Love." Yes, it's a pretty amazing track. Not one I've got a lot to say about, but yeah, I think it's still an excellent track though.
Yeah, it's got, to me, what sets this song apart. First of all, the bass playing by Tony Garnier, who was just incredible to listen to. And again, every time I've seen Bob, Tony's been with him. And he's played with everybody, like I said earlier, so he knows what he's doing. And then it's got that great slow kind of shuffle, which is being played by Jim Keltner, he's not drumming on every track, but this is one of the few. He does about half of the tracks, I'd say. And this is one of the ones where Jim Keltner is playing just effortless to it. Again, that great bluesy intro. This, if I were to classify this album to somebody, I would say it is a blues album, for the most part. Again, lyrically and the whole tone of it. And then again, lyrics, because again, I'm a lyric guy, which is why Bob is my favorite solo artist. He says, well, my house is on fire, burning to the sky. I thought it would rain, but the clouds passed by. Which, first of all, that's a great line where he's like, oh, the rain is going to relieve this fire and the cloud. You can just imagine this rain cloud zipping on to the other side of the house, not putting it out. Then he says, now I feel like I'm coming to the end of my way. Again, mortality. But I know God is my shield and he won't lead me astray. Still, I don't know what I'm going to do. I was all right till I fell in love with you. That's just rip your heart out kind of stuff. And again, Dylan has a little bit of venom on the whole record, and this is no exception. And again, it's probably underrated, probably, on the lower end for me, but just breaking it down lyrically, it's top tier Dylan. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, this was definitely one that grew on me the more I heard it. Because first time I heard it, I was like, oh, it's okay. It's bluesy. It's all right. But then second time I heard it, it was like, okay. I think I'm starting to like it a little bit more. Then on the third listen, that's where I really started to notice all the nuances. Like Sam mentioned, the bass playing on the album, on this album, is very good. And of course, as a bass player myself, that usually tickles me. But yeah, it's a great shuffle, great beat to it. The guitar, really nice, really suits the song. Yeah, it's just a pretty good song. Again, probably somewhere in the middle for me, but yeah, definitely a grower for me. So yeah, pretty good.
Good
Yeah.
deal.
And then we go to another one of my favorite tracks. It's actually my top 10 Bob Dylan songs currently, and it's Not Dark Yet. Yeah, it's brilliant. Everything's brilliant about this one, but I think it's the lyrics that really make it one of my favorite Bob Dylan songs.
Yeah, it's in my top 10 favorite Dylan tracks too of all time. I've never heard him do it live, even though he does do it live. But I've just never caught any of those shows. This is one of the songs I quote quite often in my day-to-day life, even like just referencing the sun going down. Like, and I kind of play off of it with my mom because I got my mom into this song, and because she's a fan of the songwriters too, like I am, and I would always say, it's not dark yet, and then she will have to say, but it's getting there, which to me is one of the most heart-wrenching lyrics ever, ever. The way that he says it
gets me every time.
It's brutal. And it opens beautifully, and then he closes with just this powerful. He says, "I was born here, and I'll die here against my will." So he's not going to leave where he is, even though he doesn't want to be there. I know it looks like I'm moving, but I'm standing still. Every nerve in my body is so vacant and numb. I can't even remember what it was I came here to get away from. And then he says this killer line, "Don't even hear a murmur of a prayer. It's not dark yet, but it's getting there." And the way that he rhymes prayer with there, Bob, the way that he pronounces prayer, he says like prayer, like kind of like that. And then he says there. It's just so good. And then it's been covered by huge names. Eric Clapton has done it, Tom Jones has done it, Rufus Wainwright has done it. So this isn't a slouch type song, but yeah, I mean, just beautiful. I mean, who would have thought that, especially in the 90s? I can imagine people thinking like, how can Dylan pull out something this good? Because before this album again too, he had done 2 folk covers albums, so we hadn't received we haven't received original Dylan since 1990. So 7 years had gone by without original Dylan tunes. And so to get a song like this, you're like, that's why he was holding up. That's why he was getting inspiration, because he'll do that about every 10 years or so. He'll kind of go into a weird slump. And he did just recently, he did those 3 Sinatra Standards albums. Back in the 90s, he did the folk albums. And then in the 70s, he did the Dylan and Self-Portrait albums, which had a bunch of, covers on them. So he's always kind of using that as like inspiration to like reboot and to get his juices going, I think. And I think this was the fruit of those labors. And I think it's a perfect track. Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Definitely agree.
Yeah. 3 for 3 on that. Yeah. This is probably also my top 10 favorite Bob Dylan songs for all the reasons you both mentioned. Again, just the lyrics to it. Again, you hear the lyrics and you can just feel it. Like even at my young age, I feel that emotion sometimes. So it's just perfect vibe to kind of capture that feeling. Again, guitars just really come together. Just has this great ray of sound. The keyboards just really adding to the atmosphere. There's just like again, like Sam said, it's a perfect song. This is a very great one. Probably my favorite on the album, honestly. So, yeah, love it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. There's not much else to really say other than that, really. But I think Tom Jones's cover of Not Dark Yet might be my favorite Tom Jones song.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But then we got the song Cold Iron's Bound. Yeah, pretty great song. Again, one of the more middle of the road ones for me. But I still have fun with it though.
Yeah, well, this is the song that won the Grammy for Best Male Rock Vocal in 1998. And one of 3 Grammys that the album won, because it also won Album of the Year and Best Contemporary Folk Album. So
Yeah.
this was a huge song for Dylan to revitalize that mid career, again at the time later career, now mid career track, and it's got that great, the great Daniel Lanois echo on the vocals. Great kind of a biting guitar sound. And there's actually a great version he was in a movie called Masked and Anonymous, which came out the following year, where there's like this scene in the movie where it's like close up on Dylan and the band is kind of like stacked behind him. They kind of do it a little bit more, they rock it out a little bit. And actually, because of the tempo that they go, they actually cut about a minute and a half off of it because of the speed that they're playing. But again, some of that rockabilly feel, which Dylan incorporates in those early 2000s albums too, like Modern Times and Together Through Life, he kind of keeps that rockabilly feel. Again, biting guitar, tight playing by the guys. The lyric that I kind of pulled from this, the walls of pride are high and wide, can't see over to the other side. It's such a sad thing to see beauty decay. Again, something fading, youth to maturity. It's sadder still to feel your heart torn away. One look at you and I'm out of control, like the universe has swallowed me whole. I'm 20 miles out of town and cold irons bound. Just, again, one of those little tags throughout the whole song that he's able to loop it all together in just a few lines. And it's, again, great track. It's, again, not my favorite on the album, not my top 3, but I think it's really cool that this beat out so many songs in 1998 that Dylan was still bringing in the awards, which I'm all for. So
Yeah.
great tune.
Yeah. This was a great one. This one almost made my top 5. I think it got to number 6, which is still pretty high. But yeah, this is probably the most rocking song on the album. Definitely has some great guitars, great bass riff as well. The drumming here is really good. It's upbeat. Again, and the keyboards again just supporting that. Yeah, I didn't write a whole lot to say about this one, but yeah, it's just a really good song, and yeah, it was just pretty good.
Cool. And then we go with Make You Feel My Love, which, spoiler alert, this is my favourite song on the album. It's in my top 5 Bob Dylan songs. Like, I can't get enough of this one. To be honest, the first time I heard it wasn't the Bob Dylan version. It was actually Adele's version of Make You Feel My Love.
Yeah.
But ever since I've heard Bob Dylan's version, I don't think you can fault Bob Dylan's version. I think it's perfect, and yeah, it's an excellent song. With everything about it, it's one of Bob Dylan's best in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. I saw him do that. I've seen him do this twice, and the first time I saw him was the first time I saw this song was 2018 ish. Yeah, 2018. My whole family was there with me. So my mom, my dad, my 2 sisters, and then I had a cousin and a good friend from college all there. And actually, I won 2 tickets to that show on the radio. So my parents actually had better seats below us because it was just 2 tickets, and we had all already bought tickets for everybody else. So I remember my mom and my sister both teared up during the song, hearing it live. Because my sister knew the Adele version and mom just knew the song as it was. And then my buddy from college, he knew it because of Garth Brooks, who had a huge hit with it. It's also been covered. Neil Diamond's covered it. Boy George has covered it. Michael Bublé. Pink just recently covered it not too long ago. So it's been covered by, I think, 40 or 50 different big name artists. And so
it must be one of his most covered songs.
Yeah. And what's great about this too is that there's only 3 players on it, and Bob is playing piano on it. And in the way that Bob plays now live, he only plays piano live. Occasionally guitar, but I think he has some arthritis that kind of keeps him from playing too much guitar these days. But he plays piano beautifully. Very underappreciated piano player. Again, beautiful love song. It's fantastic. Again, when the evening shadows and the stars appear and there's no one there to dry your tears, I could hold you for 1,000,000 years to make you feel my love. Bob has seen and lost love many, many times. And he's also very private about who he's been with and who he's married and that sort of thing too. But you always know that he's going through something when he puts out a song like this. And just, again, like you said, Adam, you can't really take any other version once you hear Bob's, because the pain is in his. I mean, the other artists, for the most part, do it fairly well, but it just doesn't hold a candle to me. It'll always be Bob's to me. And it's just a killer song. Definitely,
Yeah.
it's song number 2 for me on this album. It's my second favorite after Not Dark Yet.
Right. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I don't have much else to add to that. Yeah, and it's just like 3 instruments mainly, but yeah, it's just a really beautiful song. It almost made the top 3. It made number 4 on my list, but still, yeah, it's a fantastic song, and it's one of Bob's most covered songs for a reason.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's great.
Then we've got the track "Can't Wait." Pretty great track, but I think you had a lot to live up to after "Make You Feel My Love." It would have been hard for it to be an amazing track after that one. But yeah, I still think it's pretty great though.
Yeah, for me, when I listened to it, I thought instrumentation wise, it sounds very much like 1980s Tom Waits with the music. Again, great beat. Jim Keltner is laying down the drums, gives it a whole mood. Just like this whole album is kind of a moody record anyway. Again, top notch bass playing by Tony, and then the organ is played by Jim Dickinson, and he's really going off on some great licks on the organ. And again, love the track. The lyric that I pulled was, "It's mighty funny, the end of time has just begun." There we go again, talking about time. "Oh, honey, after all these years, you're still the one. While I'm strolling through the lonely graveyard of my mind, I left my life with you somewhere back there along the line. I thought somehow that I would be spared this fate, but I don't know how much longer I can wait." So again, he's waiting on somebody. They're not coming around. It's about kind of like that love that you want, but you just can't get it. You can't wait around for them. The timing isn't there. You're holding on to somebody that you loved years ago, but you're like, I can't wait for you much longer. I'm getting older. You're getting older, that sort of thing. But again, really great track. Again, second to last track. Yeah, not much more to add to it.
Yeah. Same here. Not a whole lot to say, but this was another song that really grew on me on multiple listens. Because again, I know the drumming is very good. Again, the bass playing is also very worth noting. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about it, but I really enjoyed the whole just listening through it all the way through, and yeah, it's just a very good kind of more upbeat song on here. So yeah, that's all I gotta say.
And we reached the final track, "Highlands." I think it's great, but I'm not gonna lie, it's not one of my favorite long Bob Dylan songs. It's not one. It's one I've had to listen to just in the album. It's not Desolation Row or Starlight Lady or The Lowlands for me, which I listen to those ones out of the album. But for this one, yeah, I still think it's great. It's just I don't think it needs to be 16 minutes long. Maybe 8 minutes, 10 minutes at a push. I think would have been all right.
Yeah, it's up until the song "Murder Most Foul" off of his most recent original record. This was the longest Dylan track, and I think at that time it was like the longest Dylan track by like at least 4 minutes. I think "Sad Eyed Lady" was third, I believe. I might be mistaken, but "Murder Most Foul" beat it by like 25 seconds. But it's Bob having a little fun with the lyrics. There's a lot of the riff is just repeated through the whole 16 minutes. It's got a great groove to it. It was inspired by a little bit like by Charlie Patton, which he writes a song about Charlie Patton on his follow-up album, "Time Out of Mind." Love and Theft. And it was also inspired by Robert Burns. And there's an interesting line. I would mention Jim Dickinson in the last song, "The Organ Player," and they were talking about recording the song, and they said there were 2 different versions of it, and one of the managers from the studio came out and was like, "Hey, that was great, Bob, but do you have the short version of that song?" And Bob said
That is the short version.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that story for a long time, and I just think it's a hilarious little bit, which is so Dylan because he's like, "Yeah, you can't tell me what to do." But he does this whole like spiel about he's in like a diner and he's talking to the waitress and he just back and forth. This is like this long series of back and forth. Like, "I want soft boiled eggs. We're out of them. Well, can you draw me a picture? And I think part of that was Dylan talking about his own fame and just being tired of people coming up to him and saying, "Hey, can you write a song about this? Can you do this? You're the songwriter." And in the song, it's like this: the waitress is saying, you know, "I heard you're an artist. Why don't you draw me a picture?" And he's kind of like, "Yeah, no, I don't want to do that." But there's a great funny line where the waitress is talking to him about, you know, you must not understand women. You don't read women authors, and he says, well, she says, "You just don't seem like you do." I said, "You're wrong. You're way wrong." She says, "Which ones have you read then?" I said, excuse me. I say I read Erica Jong, who is a feminist female writer. So it's like, you know, I read women authors and I read ones that know women. And he says, she goes away for a minute and I slide up out of my chair. I step outside back to the busy street, but nobody's going anywhere. And then you cut ahead a few bars, and he says, "The sun is beginning to shine on me, but it's not like the sun that used to be. The party's over, and there's less and less to say. I got new eyes. Everything looks far away." So again, he's closing out this album with, you know, talking about mortality and talking about, you know, what can be, what was. You know, there was greatness, but now that greatness is further and further away from him. But again, great track. I'm like you, Adam, though. I don't usually reach for the longer Dylan tracks. Sad Eyed Lady is actually not a favorite of mine. It's one of my least favorite Bob Dylan songs, to be honest, which is crazy because a lot of people put it up there as a masterpiece. But yeah, it's a nice little ending to the album. But yeah, it's 16 minutes. It kind of rambles a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, with this one, yeah, it's another one of his long songs, and you know, generally I do like some of his long songs. Like I do like Sad Eyes of Lowland. I do like that one. But yeah, I can definitely see this one going on a bit because it does keep the same rhythm the whole way through, the same melody. But you know, it still has a pretty interesting vibe to it. Definitely another one of the more mellow songs here. The organ, guitars really good. But you know, again, even though it's long, like again, I'm still kind of paying attention to it. It's not like it's long to the point where I'm drifting off. Like I'll still be paying attention to it. But overall, it's still a very solid way to conclude the album, and yeah, I think it's pretty good. It's like again somewhere in the middle for me.
Yeah. Well, there we go. We've gone through all the tracks. I enjoyed discussing all of them. And what are your final thoughts on this album? I think it's a really good one. It's definitely a really good one for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I'm probably very biased because I'm not going to say. I mean, I even think that a lot of Dylan's like really, what a lot of people consider really terrible albums in the 80s. I think some of those are still good. They all have a couple of things that I can take away, like albums like Knocked Out Loaded or Empire Burlesque. I love the album. I don't listen to it that much, and if I'm listening to albums from that period, I'm probably going to reach for Love and Theft first, and then maybe Modern Times, and then this, which a lot of people say are like a little trilogy, but Dylan's, of course, being the ever changing fellow, is like, no, that's not a trilogy. He's like, these are the trilogy. That's not a trilogy. So, you know, just to mess with people's heads, but I really like it. You know, I don't know if we're ranking it yet or anything like that, but it's if I were to rank all the Dylan albums, it's not in my top 10. But again, Dylan's my favorite, so like it's hard for me to find a lot of flaw with Bob. But I mean, I will. I mean, like I said, Highlands is a little too long for my liking, but yeah, it's a solid piece.
Yeah, for me, this was definitely an album. It was really nice to revisit this one because again, I haven't heard this one in like a couple years since I bought the CD. And listen to it again, it really was like, oh my god, this album was a lot better than I thought it was. Because I didn't hate it, but I just kind of like, okay, it's pretty good. I like it. But yeah, my appreciation for this album has gone up pretty much tremendously. I would consider this one definitely one of his best of this kind of period of his. But overall, it's really nice to kind of give it another listen. So this was really good.
Yeah, I enjoy revisiting it as well. So there were a couple of tracks like I've completely forgotten about, but I'll definitely revisit. We might as well go through our favorite tracks on the album. If you ranked all 11 tracks, you can quickly share that if you want. If you ranked all 11 of them, or just give your top three. It's up to you.
I mean, for me, I mean, number one is Not Dark Yet, and then Make You Feel My Love, and then Dirt Road Blues.
Mm,
So
yeah.
that's 1, 2, that's 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I did actually rank all 11 because that's become a habit of me. But number 11, I'll just go through real quick. So number 11 was Dirt Road Blues. Number 10, Lovesick. Number 9, Million Miles. Number 8, Till I Fell in Love with You. 7, Highlands. 6, Cold Iron Bound. 5, Can't Wait. 4, Make You Feel My Love. Standing in the Doorways. Number 3. Number 2, Trying to Get to Heaven. And number 1 is Not Dark Yet.
Cool. Well, my number 11 is the last track, Highlands. My number 10 is Dirt Road Blues. 9's Million Miles. 8, Cold Irons Bound. 7, Can't Wait. 6, Till I Fell in Love with You. Love Sick, made it in, that's my number 5. Trying to Get to Heaven's my number 4. Standing in the Doorways number 3. Not Dark Yet's number 2, but Make You Feel My Love is my number 1.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I guess we might as well give the album a rating. What do we give it? Do we think it's an awful album or a mediocre album? What do we think it's an excellent one? Or are we somewhere in the middle?
I've said before, it's hard for me to give like a 10 out of 10 to any album. Really, the only albums that I give 10 out of 10s to are my top 10 favorite albums of all time. And obviously, this is not it. And I mean, again, I could do Highlands can be cut down a little bit. Songs like Till I Fell in Love with You for me and Million Miles aren't too strong. So again, ranking this album probably creeping up on an 8. Not a full 8 yet, just because there's a little bit of, like many albums from the 90s, it's a little bloated because they can fit everything onto a CD and make it an hour, and it's a little too much for me. But yeah, I would say like a 7, 8-ish. So it's just under an 8 for me. But I love the album, and again, this gives you a new appreciation for it if you ever really get into the album, or if you're just a mega Dylan fan like I am, to get this and hear it stripped way back.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of agree with Sam. I'm going to go give it an 8 out of 10 as well. Again, it's a really good album. But again, I'd say my least favorite tracks were the more bluesy kind of rockabilly songs. They weren't bad. Like I said, there's no bad songs on here, but comparatively, my top five is probably going to be the ones. Maybe my top 6 are the ones I'm going to revisit to the most, and then everything after that will be like it's like on occasion, like if I decide to play this whole album from the start to finish, then that's usually when. But yeah, again, it's a good album. I'll give it 8 out of 10.
Cool. Well, I'm someone that rates albums quite high. I'm probably notorious for that. But I think the length of it and the production can get a bit tiring after a while. So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Yeah.
Nice.
Do you guys think it's underrated, properly rated, or overrated?
It's not overrated.
Definitely
for
not,
sure.
no.
Because again, like I said, it saved Dylan out of a big slump, because even his album from 1990, which was Under a Red Sky, and then he had World Gone Wrong, Good as I've Been to You. Good as I've Been to You, then World Gone Wrong. So he had 3 albums that were very much hated by the press. And then this album comes out, 5 years after the last Covers album, and they're like, oh my goodness, Dylan. They love to say that Dylan's back. So it was a good little jump start, and really from this album onward, if you exclude the Sinatra albums, which I love, but for his original material, Dylan has yet to make an album since 1997 that people consider to be like a stinker. Like this, they say like these are great records, and he's done 5 or 6 since then of original albums. So I think it's excellent. I think that it really rejuvenated Dylan and kind of put him back on the map in terms of being relevant. And again, here he is now, 81, 82, and still being relevant with Rough and Rowdy Ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's underrated. I don't think it's overrated. I think it's perfect the way it is. It has just the right amount. Because for all the reasons Sam said, again, this was really his comeback album. I mean, this did really well. Of course, people are always going to refer to his early career, of course, but for this part of his career, this is definitely a huge milestone for him during this time. So yeah, I think it's rated just so.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's properly rated, but I think it should be discussed a bit more in the minor community, though.
It's fair. I can see.
Yeah, again, like we've been saying, it shows that Dylan was still putting in a large amount of work. I mean, he was already well into his never-ending tour, even though it's never been fully called that, where he just consistently tours, and really has since the late '80s. Obviously, COVID set him back, but even still, he's on that never-ending tour, and a lot of these songs are still in the set list. Like I said, I've seen Lovesick, I've seen Dirt Road Blues, Trying to Get to Heaven, Not Dark Yet, and I believe I've seen Cold Irons Bound and Make You Feel My Love. So like I've seen over half of these songs, if not 3/4 of these songs, performed live still since the first time I saw him back in 2015. So he still has a lot of respect for these songs. I mean, obviously these weren't his hits because he was out of his hit phase, but they still are important to him to keep playing.
I wonder if he'll ever tour the UK. I'm still waiting to have a Newcastle tour.
Yeah, it's hard to say. He's announcing a bunch of U.S. dates still, kind of on the East and Midwest. And last time I saw him was April of 22. But every time I see him, as soon as the concert's over, I say I'm ready to see him again. Like I want to see him again. So I'm looking at dates and seeing if I can squeeze one in. But right now he's not coming too close to me. But hopefully he gets to the UK as well.
Mm-hmm.
But no,
when was the last time he was in the UK? Was it quite a few years ago?
No, it wasn't too long ago. Usually when he does a worldwide tour, he's pretty much worldwide. He was on the last leg of the tour before he re-announced these shows. I think he was down in like Chile and South America, and he was in Portugal and parts of Spain. And then he always does Japan. And again, these new round of dates, he's doing a lot in Ontario and Canada. And again, the Midwest. He hasn't announced really any West Coast here, but the UK he usually does some of the smaller 2,000 seat venues, which is what he pretty much does regularly. But hopefully he adds something on. This tour is supposed to go until 2024. So hopefully you'll have about another year of him announcing dates. So hopefully he makes it over there.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been great to have you both on this first episode of Under the Radar. I'll definitely invite you both on again.
Well, thanks for the invite. This was fun to be a part of, and nice to meet Bryer officially.
Yeah, same here. Likewise.
I think the next time I might do an ELO album. I'm going to do one for each of the members of the Wilburys.
Oh, cool.
It's Jefflin's turn next. I might go with Discovery by ELO.
Okay. Yeah, I'm down for that one.
It's a nice teaser there.
I always refer to it as a disco ELO album.
Yeah. Right.
So, yeah,
has disco in the name.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
I just noticed that.
Yep.
Maybe it was there all along. Yeah.
Yep.
It was great to have you both on this live stream, and thank you for everybody watching. Definitely let us know in the comments your thoughts on this album, whether you think it's underrated, properly rated, or overrated. Do you guys have any final words?
Go buy
not dark yet, but it's getting there.
Yeah, there you go.
I was going to say that at the beginning of the live stream.
I love it. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining on this live stream, and thanks to everybody watching. Until next time, ciao.